The CE-5 movement, which was begun by Dr. Stephen Greer in the early 1990s, really started with a small group, Greer himself and a few others, and it has grown now in the year 2016 to a global movement. It has taken a new life and accelerated through the use of social media like Facebook and websites dedicated to this topic, and that's created a network of international like-minded thinkers and meditators that try to make contact with extraterrestrial intelligence through this special CE-5 protocol. And I see the future continuing along this path of global coordinated meditation, and where we're taking it really is to do remote synchronized meditations to establish a coherent consciousness within the practitioners of the CE-5 protocol, and establish as well a group intention, asking the ETs to show up at the same time that groups are meditating in remote locations around the world. So we're doing this right now in America. This weekend we're doing a coordinated CE-5 event with a group in Mount Shasta, California, and here in Port Austin, and I see that growing to, ultimately dozens and hundreds of groups that coordinate their dates and times, and hopefully that will amplify the message to connect to ETs. And in the end, I hope that there's some kind of tipping point that's reached, some kind of 100th monkey effect that will ultimately cause a global event to take place. Call it first contact. I think it'll be a very benign kind of contact in which ETs will show themselves in the skies. What I actually envision is a grid of stars that are surrounding the Earth from horizon to horizon, where the ETs' light ships appear in the sky as stars, and they will be in the foreground of the star field that we see each night. And it'll be very obvious then to humankind around the globe that there's some kind of extraterrestrial intelligence that is responding to our call to them, and that call will be one of universal brotherhood and sisterhood.
Stephen Greer talks about the exchange of universal principles between ETs and humans. Can you talk about what those principles are?
There are a set of spiritual laws, just like there are a set of natural laws in the universe. Laws in physics, such as the standard model of particle physics, the theory of relativity, quantum mechanics are all examples of natural laws that we can use in our intellect to make predictions about space and time and apply them to engineering problems. Well, the same is true for spiritual laws. There are universal spiritual laws. Many of those laws we use as a basis for our ethical and moral code. Things like thou shalt not steal or kill. When we reach out to our universal family and we make contact, we will learn that these spiritual laws are just that, universal. Things like reverence for life is a universal law. We have not yet learned this law. We are in the process of learning it, and we're kind of going about it a very hard way. But the bottom line is that because we don't have reverence for our planet, we are risking our own future and the ecosystem in which the planet's sustainability is based. And unless we wise up very quickly, we're going to, have a very tough time of it. I'm cautiously optimistic about our future. I think we're going to turn the corner in time, but that's only if we all wake up and take responsibility for our actions. And that's not just as individuals, but as corporations and as nations and as a global community. So these things we will learn apply not just to our own planet, but are universal in nature. And I think that's the most important and poignant example I can give. I guess I see, the media's portrayal of extraterrestrial intelligence as not just negative. I do see examples of positive stories being portrayed in science fiction movies and stories. The Extraterrestrial by Steven Spielberg was a very positive message. Close Encounters of the Third Kind was a very exciting story that came out in the mid-1970s. So it's not all been negative, and I think we'll begin to see more of this. I even see things like Star Trek having a very positive message about exploring new worlds and seeing life on other planets that are much different than ourselves, but yet the exchange of cultures being a very positive and exciting kind of exchange. Things though like Independence Day and War of the Worlds are the example of the opposite. And I just think that's human nature, that we tell stories on the full spectrum of the storytelling spectrum. It's just, we're human beings, and some of us like telling scary stories, and some of us like telling uplifting and inspiring stories about anything, whether they be ETs or life in general. So I don't see that, I personally do not see a bias. I think it's up to us, being the educated viewer, to interpret fiction when it's given to us in the form of movies and pop culture, and being able to sort the kind of the over-the-top exaggeration for the purpose of scaring us, thrilling us, because we like that. It's like a roller coaster ride. And we know it's fiction. We know we're just being entertained. But this is a very serious subject, and there are books and movies and other memes reaching us through social media and YouTube that take a very serious approach to the idea of ET intelligence and its impact on us, what it would mean if we were to make contact with another culture from another star system. And it does cause us to take a moment and pause and reflect on how that would change our worldview. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's an important thing, and I think it's a timely thing. And ultimately, I think inevitably in the next decade or two, we're going to be faced with that prospect. And it's time now to begin entertaining that thought that we may be contacted sooner than we think. I believe that contact will be made within the next 5 years, if not sooner. It's going to be the kind of thing that I described earlier, where there will be synchronized global meditation by people like us doing the CE-5 protocol, and we'll ask the ETs to show themselves, and they will. And they'll do it in a very benign way for a few moments. They'll show themselves collectively in the skies in a pattern or in a way that we will recognize it as something intelligent as opposed to a natural phenomenon. And they'll disappear for a while. And it's going to, it's going to shake people, a lot of people who aren't aware of it. But I think our job, especially in the CE-5 movement, is to begin talking about it and saying this is going to happen sooner than later. And when it does happen, hopefully people, when they see it, will recognize it as something that was predicted. And we, as ambassadors for extraterrestrials, will let people know as well that this is not an invasion. This isn't some prelude to a takeover. It is simply a response to a request from humans around the globe to say, please, we want to see you, and we'd like to say hello. Will you wave back at us? And they will. They're going to wave back to us, and people around the world are going to see it, and hopefully most people will have at least heard through the social media network that this is happening, this is going to be happening, and when it does happen, they'll not be freaked out. At least they'll say, hey, somebody knew about this and they told us it was a benign thing. It was just simply a response to a request from a group of people on Earth who reached out to the ETs, and the ETs responded. And this then will spark a global conversation that will be very exciting, to many people like myself. And maybe, if you're fear-based, they'll be a little afraid of the idea that ETs are here and they're surrounding our planet, and maybe they've been here for a very long time. But I think they'll get over it. I think that they will ultimately seek out sources of information to answer some of their key questions about who they are, what's the relationship to us, how long have they been involved in human and Earth history. There are answers to these questions, and they'll be interested to hear from those that seem to know these answers. And it'll open their eyes and their minds to the reality, and it's not going to be a cakewalk by any means. It's not going to be some kumbaya moment as soon as the ETs show themselves, that's for sure. But it will open up a new era of awareness for the planet and human consciousness on this planet. I ultimately see that once the dust settles and once people get over their fears, people will become fascinated with the history and begin to join those of us who are aware and have already spoken to and communicated with extraterrestrial intelligence to get their own answers and participate in this global awakening, which is very exciting. One of the things that I think the key thing, in fact, that is requiring this acceleration to contact with ET intelligence is that we, as a human species, have accelerated so quickly along the technological path that we've gotten a bit ahead of ourselves without the spiritual evolution. In fact, we've atrophied from a spiritual perspective or standpoint. And this has created a crisis, a spiritual crisis, where we're motivated by material things, we're wowed by technology, and we like to use it for our personal benefit instead of for the benefit of the global community, and especially those people in need. We need to be careful not to let this, this split or divide between our technical advancement and our spiritual advancement to continue. We've got to stop. The consequence is that we're going to develop technologies, very powerful technologies, that could easily fall into the wrong hands and wipe us out, or continue to create this mass psychosis that I think the world is suffering from, and that is an apathy for suffering, and whether it's other human beings in poverty-stricken countries, or the ecology and animals being wiped out due to pollution and other technologically related issues. And we need to really stop what we're doing, because we're hurting the earth, we're hurting the ecosystem, we're hurting certain species of animals in the animal kingdoms that are critical in the balance of our planet and the ecosystem itself. It's really important that we wake up quickly. And what's really exciting is that if we focus on developing our spiritually innate abilities, our body is a type of technology that we're not tapping into yet. And it's through the practice of meditation that we can reach, through a barrier and connect with universal consciousness. We're each like a node on the internet. We're a computer. And we just simply need to plug into that global network, which we call universal consciousness in the CE-5 movement. But the process in which to do that requires us to quiet our minds, tame the monkey mind, and then listen, and the connection is made. And we can see a direct cause and effect relationship in the field when we're doing this meditative practice to connect with ETs. And that is evidence that our consciousness, when we're working together in groups, small groups of people, that we can connect, set an intention with ET intelligence, and ask them to appear in the sky above us at a specific time. Our favorite time in my group here in Port Austin is 11:11 p.m. But we ask them to appear at midnight, at 1:11, and lo and behold, they do. And that is evidence. And that, for many people who are new to the CE-5 experience, when they are participating in a group meditation and listening and assisting in setting the group intention, and they see the result, there's a breakthrough. They know it's real, and it's a very safe and benign way for the ETs to acknowledge us, and especially somebody new who might be frightened. They're so sensitive to the individual. They don't want to freak us out. And so by putting ourselves in a setting where we are reaching out and we hope to get a response from them, they do that in a very safe way. So somebody who's never seen a ship appear before sees it for the first time, appear at a specific time just for a second. Maybe it's as a flash bulb of light up in the sky. We've seen it where it's happened 6 or 12 times in a row, literally. Boom, 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 boom. And you see that, you know it's not natural. And when it happens right at the time you ask them to do it, you know that they're responding to that group intention. And doing it in a group as well is important, because you learn that by working with groups, that it helps us, it prepares us for the shock of ET contact. One is that we have other witnesses that are corroborating what we're seeing in the skies. So the person who saw this, if they had seen it by themselves, they might later doubt themselves that they actually saw what they saw. But when a dozen people or 25 people having a CE-5 workshop in the field see that all at once, and they all take notes and talk about it the next morning, there's no doubt about it. It really happened. And that's really powerful. And then that leads, once you walk through that threshold for the first time, it's a new world. It's a new world for the individual. They know they're there now, and now they can move on with confidence and certainty in their mind that they exist. Now, what's the next question? How long have they been around? Who are they? What's our relationship to them? And are they here to help us? And those are important questions for an individual to answer. And the answers are beautiful. Well, I believe the only obstacle facing the CE-5 movement is fear in all its forms. Maybe the fear of it not working, the fear that we're not going to be able to make contact, the fear that if we make contact, the bad ETs are going to show up and take over. These are obstacles that we need to overcome, and they're easy to overcome. It's just recognizing that there's nothing to fear but fear itself, and that if we move forward with confidence and faith, I'll go ahead and use a spiritually charged word. If we have faith moving forward and see this cause and effect relationship to what we're doing in the field and what we're seeing, and when we see it, don't be afraid. We'll be fine. We'll move forward, and lots of doors open up to us. So confidence, optimism, a sense of joy. I felt great joy the first time I saw a ship materialize above our CE-5 group in California back in 2012. I was elated because I knew the human family on this planet was not alone. And that's really powerful. That feeling of unity and connectedness with beings on other planets that actually are our ancestors in a way. They are are creators in a way. They are master geneticists that have been working on this planet for millennia, and they have had a hand in the life that we see all around us in creating it. They and nature itself, through the process of natural evolution, our evolution, physical evolution, and our conscious evolution, in fact, has been guided and manipulated at key points in time in our evolutionary history. But, you know, nature has also had a big hand in it as well. And so this aspect of our history and our physical evolution being, on one hand, a scientific-based and natural-based evolution, but also a spiritual-based evolution, and that's how the ETs see this, that it's a combination of these two things. You can think of it as science meets art. We are the art project, and that's beautiful. The CE-5 movement represents a very, very tiny fraction of the human population, and there's some tipping point by which we will bring about this global contact event that I spoke of earlier. But right now, small groups of ET or CE-5 groups can meditate together and see results, and the ETs are showing up. They're waiting for us. You know, they're just patiently waiting for us, and they're applauding our work. And that's, you know, evidenced by the fact that they show up when we ask them to. They're not going to impose themselves on us because we would freak out. Maybe I wouldn't, because I'm aware and excited to see a ship materialize, but you can imagine a big ship materializing above a large city, and most people would freak out. They would think this is the beginning of Independence Day, and that doesn't serve us or the ETs well. They're with us, they're supporting us, especially those of us working in the CE-5 movement, and they're going to continue to do so. And eventually, once we meet this tipping point, then they can show themselves to the world. And that tipping point, remember, is a combination of a number of things. One is that we continue growing the CE-5 community through social networks like Facebook and websites, getting together in the field and actually doing the field work. And that family is growing. The second thing that I think is really important is that as we do that, the people who are the skeptics and are kind of laughing at us doing this work, at least they're aware of it. As we gain more and more success, as we video the skies and capture their craft appearing, and we post that on Facebook and YouTube, more and more people are going to watch that and see it, and by word of mouth, through a grassroots type of exchange, people will learn about this upcoming event that's going to happen in 2020. In fact, I'll be so bold as to give you a date that this will actually happen on July 14th, 2020. That will begin on July 5th. This is going to be a 10-day event, global meditation, that will be organized in the years preceding to allow people to schedule vacations if they want to be home, or join groups of people that will congregate and meditate together and help bring about and usher in this new era that we've talked about. And so this is going to be, catching, I think, the people's ears, through social media and maybe hopefully the mass media. And there will clearly, at first they'll make fun of us, and then things will start happening, starting July 5th and 6th and 7th. More and more is going to happen, and people are going to take notice. It'll culminate on the 14th of July with this grid pattern that covers the sky from horizon to horizon. And so people will be ready. People will be prepared, and the skeptics will now be interested because they will have seen things in the skies, days before July 14th. That will make them realize, hey, maybe there's something to this global CE-5 meditation, and I should pay attention. And maybe they would even participate just to see what happens. So I think this is going to be the way that the ETs ultimately show themselves, and again, they're working with us. They are so excited to see the CE-5 group, growing and becoming a global community, and we're very supportive of one another. We're doing synchronized meditations now. We're just starting this, and this is a new phase of the movement that's taken root, taken hold, and it's very exciting times. Many of us on Earth are spiritual, in fact, and seeing the consequences of this warlike nature, that we're evolving out of. I think our warlike nature that's part of our DNA is a consequence of our history of evolving from the animal kingdom into human beings. It was a so-called dog-eat-dog world. We really had to, in order to survive, look out for our personal well-being at the expense of others outside of our immediate families or our tribe. And that's deeply ingrained in our DNA, but we've reached a level of consciousness where we are seeing the interconnectivity of everything in the world, the ecosystems, and how the dying off of the oceans in areas of the world is having great impact and threatening our very existence. That this could reach some kind of tipping point that's irreversible, and there would be a cascading effect in which the ecosystem would fail. And what would we eat? And how would we survive without the animals and plants that sustain us? We are waking up, and we've seen it in the U.S. election in 2016. I think Bernie Sanders, his popularity, over just a 12-month period, he went from a no-name, nobody knew, to a true movement, a political, socio-economical movement. And it's a consequence out of this awakening that we're going through.